Welcome to the Home-Based Learning Parent-Teacher Connection webinar. This is my third webinar. We are going to co-create a home-based learning environment, parents and teachers together offering ideas for what we could do to have a better home-based learning environment for today's children. As we move along, I'm going to be asking you to think about the ideas you may have and just put them in that question area. So the 8 elements of home-based learning are what I put together to explain what a home-based learning environment is like. And I constantly make this distinction for parents and teachers. Parents, you are not homeschooling your children. I hear some people on television in the news saying parents homeschooling. You're not homeschooling your children because your children are being schooled by the schools, by the teachers who are working so hard to do that. What you have to do, however, is manage an environment in which your children at home can take advantage of what these schools have to offer, and in which ways in which your children can benefit and thrive in a home-based learning environment. So that's what we're all about here, and that's what we're going to be discussing. In case you don't know who I am, I'm the designer of a framework called the Learner Active Technology Infused Classroom, and it's all about putting students in charge of their own learning, building their executive function, having them take much greater responsibility, solving real-world problems, etc. And I've personally been thrilled to hear from a lot of LATIC teachers and school districts and students that LATIC students are able to do this with no problem. They just switch right on over, and being home-based is not much different than being in the classroom. So we're thrilled about that. I have with me tonight Tanya Bosco, our Executive Vice President for IDE Corp. Say hi, Tanya.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening.
If you weren't in one of my prior webinars, there is a site that we have called and I'll give you the link later, but it's the number 4, theparents.idecorp.com. And you can access their information on the prior webinars. We will make sure that those are posted, and we'll make sure that the video from tonight is posted as well. And we're going to do a little co-creation on that site. So what I want to do then is, if you saw the last webinars, you might know a little bit about this. I just want to work through each one of the 8 elements. The first of which is creating structure. I think this is so important. It's in schools, students have a structure around them. There are times when they go to certain classes, there are protocols that they follow in school, etc. And even in terms of being at home, they probably wake up around the same time every day, they have their breakfast, they get their lunch, they go off to school, maybe they get the bus, whatever it is, there's a lot of structure. The problem with working from home is it can become unstructured very quickly. And while that's not so bad for a weekend, it's not really conducive to learning to just let everything be unstructured, because students need that sense of normalcy that structure brings. So we want to think about how can we co-create that as parents and teachers in terms of how do we structure time, space, expectations, and processes. And more often, will be the parents that will help to structure the time and space, and it will be the teachers that help to structure the expectations and the processes, and a certain amount of the time. So the last time that we spoke, I gave you some ideas for how you can structure. And what I want you thinking about as I talk through these is, what other structures do you think we should add? And that's what you will put in the question area. So for instance, I believe students should have time set for what I call readiness. Have your children wake up at the same time every day, have them have breakfast in the same way, everything about getting ready. So it's like, get up, brush your teeth, get dressed, whatever it is to get ready, and then be ready to start your schoolwork at the same time every day. Have some structures for time in there. And then as you're working, we recommend that students schedule their own time so they literally map out what the day is going to look like. I'm going to work on my math here. My teacher's offering an English lesson at a certain time that I want to attend. I'm going to take a break here to do some exercise. I'm going to break for lunch, and I would recommend that you have lunch at the same time every day. As a matter of fact, last time I even gave the idea that you would get up in the morning and students and parents together will make their lunches, pack them up, put them in the fridge, and then at lunchtime, go and get their lunches and then, sit down to eat together, because that's what happens in school. Students have their lunches, or sometimes they obviously get fed at school, and then they eat it at the same time every day, in the same way, in the same place, area. Those kinds of structures will give a sense of normalcy to children at home. So anything that you can think of in addition to this list here that you think would help for building structures. If you are a teacher, what kind of structure, or an educator, I should say, because I know we may have some administrators here as well, what kind of structures would you recommend to parents in addition to this they put into place? And parents, what other kinds of structures might you think about, or questions might you have on structures that you want to put to co-create together? What I want you to do is put any of your ideas right now into the question area. And what Tanya is doing is she is gathering those and adding them to documents that we have that we're going to look at in a little while. Notice I have an idea down here, second from the bottom, how to get help. Teachers, it would be very helpful if you provide parents with the route for their children to get help. For instance, if your child is stuck, we have a resource area, or have them reread the directions. We have a peer expert board where they can get help from their classmates. There is a help board for the teacher, etc. The very last person a child should turn to for help is someone physically in the same room with them, a family member. Now, it's a lot easier to just turn to somebody who's sitting right near you and ask them for help, but that doesn't build resourcefulness. It doesn't build independence. It doesn't build executive function. And it may or may not actually gel with whatever the teacher is asking students to do. So think about how you can create structures to get help where the only time I turn to my family is when I'm so frustrated that I don't know what else to do. We also talked last time about using a limited resource sign up that if, for instance, you have to share a computer at times, or if you want exercise breaks and you have a stationary bike in the house and you're sharing it, just set up a schedule that students, parents, everybody in the family can go and sign up for when they want to use different resources. Little structures like that are going to provide sanity for everybody. All right, I'm hoping you guys have put some goodies in there. I'm going to move on to projects. Now, the idea of having a bigger real world problem or a project to solve allows students to connect their learning to that. So it anchors the learning. And I always offer my favorite idea is that Tanya's daughter loves Disney World and recently went to Disneyland to learn about Imagineers, because she would like to be an Imagineer at Disney. So the project that she and her mom put together is that during this home-based learning time, she is going to be putting together a portfolio for her becoming an Imagineer. She's reading books, she's engaging in STEM projects, etc. around it. She's putting together her portfolio that she could potentially share with someone that she recently met in Disneyland. So while she's working on schoolwork, she is constantly reflecting on how that schoolwork may relate to her project of being an Imagineer. And that's how we can allow students to be somewhat more motivated and somewhat more anchored in their learning. Real world connections are always great. What are the real world problems that we can solve? And particularly right now, community-based problems, anything that has to do with not only the pandemic, but how we're going to resume life after the pandemic. You can have projects around that. You can have projects around anything. How are we going to increase the butterfly population? And then interest-based projects like the one I just explained with Tanya's daughter, those are powerful as well. What are your students interested in? What are your children at home interested in? And how might we make those connections? Some schools are engaged right now in problem-based learning and project-based learning. That is a big part of the Learner Active Classroom, LATIC. If your child is in a LATI classroom, they probably have a real world problem that they're trying to solve. If not, I mean, there are still many schools that use problem and project-based learning, but if not, think about as a parent, what kind of a bigger problem could you have as an umbrella over the work that students are doing? And then for teachers, when you think about the content you're delivering, you don't have to have a big problem-based task, but you can just think about how does this connect to the real world and what might students be able to do to, again, anchor that learning. We talk about using a design process, which we have up on the website for you, which is a very methodical process to go through to solve a real world problem. And if you're on the educator side, how can you connect your content to the arts? Some schools are managing to carry on with all of the special subject areas. Some schools are focusing more on the core content. But even if you're in the core content areas, how can you connect that to the arts? And if you are on the parent side, how can you extend that learning? So how can you say to your child, like, tell me about what you're working on, et cetera. Wow, that sounds like fun. What if we create posters that we can put up in the windows to encourage people that might be out for a walk, et cetera? You know, how can we create some sort of an arts project that will, again, allow students to use what they're learning in school and connect it together? So what are the ideas that you have as both parents or as educators for creating projects around the content so students aren't just sitting down and checking off, I did this activity, this assignment, this one, yep, I did all of those assignments, and now I'm free. But now they can think about, well, I did that assignment, but what did I learn? And how could I apply that to the project that I'm working on? And it may be that individual students are, you know, one student is really interested in Legos. So your job during this home-based learning is going to build we'll call it a Lego sphere for life on Mars. And so as the student is working on that, you can keep going back to, well, what did you learn in school today that you might be able to use in your Lego sphere? So those are the kinds of projects we want to pull together. Again, take a minute and think about what ideas do you have as parents or teachers for getting kids engaged in solving real world problems. Put those under the question, and then Tanya will add them to our document. An important part of home-based learning are resources. And so we have to think about how do we set students up to have all of the resources at their fingertips so that they don't have to stop what they're doing and run around looking for something, or they don't have to be calling their you know, siblings or moms or dads caretakers. You know, student is working and they need a highlighter. You don't want them having to stop what they're doing and, like, you know, Mom, where's the highlighter? Sure, if you're a mom, you can appreciate that. Just have your child put together all the resources they're going to need. So it can be, let's think about all the resources that we're going to need in order to work at home, because schools have lots of resources in classrooms. But get together your rulers, your scissors, your Post-it notes, your markers, your crayons, whatever. Put them all in one box near where the student is going to be working, and that's going to provide those resources for that student. When we think about resources, part of it are the materials that I'm just talking about, but then who are the people who are your resources? And what kind of resources are available virtually? These were some of the ideas we talked about in the past. In addition to setting up that box of physical materials, have your child actually, or your students, develop a set of virtual resources. So online dictionaries, online periodic tables, online encyclopedias, online atlases, whatever there is, just create a whole doc that has all of those resources together. And while the teacher can definitely create that for students, it's really empowering to have the students create it, have the students go out and look for the kinds of resources that they're going to need, and then just create a set of bookmarks to those. And then where are the teacher designated resources? In the Learner Active Classroom, we always have a resource area so that when students need help, they can go there and look for a how-to sheet, for example. And in the digital world, it would be maybe it's a how-to video, maybe it's a downloadable sheet, maybe it's a screencast that the teacher has created. So where are the teacher designated resources? Educators, I encourage you to create that area and make sure that your parents and students know where that is. Because again, parents, If your child turns to you and is always asking for help, you won't be helping them by helping them. You would be helping them by asking them, well, where could you find help? What do you have available to you? What has the teacher provided? And really get the student to think about learning to be resourceful. I do believe that today's students depend way too much on their parents. I think it's a function of our society, that simply a lot of a child's day today, when I was a kid years ago, uh, when you came home from school, you simply went out. You went out, you rode your bike all around town, you were gone for hours. You'd come home and eat, you'd be out again. And then the deal was when the street light came on, you had to come home. We don't live in a world where that's really safe anymore. It's sad to say, but that means that students' lives are very scripted for them. You come home and then we're going off to dance class, or we're going to soccer practice, or we're going to a book club, whatever. Students have very scripted lives, and they are often managed by their parents as they're younger, such that students don't have to think about anything. It's like the parent shows up and it's like, here are your cleats, here's your ball, we're taking you off. And that actually doesn't help students become resourceful. So this is the opportunity to create a home-based learning environment where we can create resourceful youngsters. Any ideas you have, put over there in the question box. How can we together create a resource-rich environment for our students, both physically and virtually? Another element of home-based learning is having downtime, something we don't think about. And as educators, we don't necessarily build that into the day. It's a little bit built into a school day to begin with, that there are times when we stop and have a snack. There's times when, if you're older, the bells ring and you leave one class and you're walking to the next class and you're talking to your friends on the way, or you might have a study hall built in. But I don't know in remote learning that we're thinking about this. So we need to build in time to just stop, move around, hydrate, and that can be done on the parent side. If the teachers have not created a very strict schedule, if it's more, these are activities in which you have to engage, work with your child to create a schedule and build in some of that downtime. At the same time, if you're an educator, then teachers, I would invite you to actually create schedules for students that include, take a water break, go get yourself a glass of water, take a break and walk around your home. Not necessarily outside, but just take a walk, do 10 jumping jacks, whatever. Just stop and give yourself a break. How does the body get a little downtime? How does the brain get to stop thinking? Social downtime. If you're constantly engaged, where you're video conferencing with a teacher and then maybe some students, and maybe you're talking with your parents, like there's a point where you just need to say, okay, I'm just gonna, chill out here in a corner by myself. That's fine. And emotional downtime. This can be stressful. It can be exciting. Students can get angry and frustrated. Whatever it is, take a break. Take some deep breaths and just give yourself a break. So we want to think about building in that kind of downtime for students. What ideas do you have for how you can create downtime for students in a home-based learning environment? Daydreaming and observing are activities that build the executive function skill of creativity, because creativity is an executive function skill. So for instance, having a student, go to the window, look out and just observe. What do you see? Is there anyone out there walking a dog? Are there birds? Are there flowers? Leaves on trees? Like, what are you observing? And after about 5 minutes of quiet observation, come back and write about it or share about it. So just having that observation break, and parents, do it as a family. Like, let's everybody go over and look out the window for 5 minutes. Don't talk. And then come back and let's talk about what we saw. And daydreaming might sound funny, but build that in. Like teachers, build in daydreaming to a schedule. It's just like find a nice, quiet, comfortable space, sit down. You can either close your eyes or keep your eyes open. But if you keep your eyes open, you should just kind of let your vision just blur so that you're not really focusing on anything in particular, and just let your mind wander. Just daydream. And then after about 5 minutes or so, come back and write about it. Building in those kinds of downtime activities can be really useful and connected to the content that students are learning as well. All right, so we'll move on now to conversation. What can happen at home is you all feel like you're cooped up together and you feel like you're with each other all day. So what's the point of a conversation? But it's so important to have conversations. And you should have conversations just one-on-one, just a duo, and then groups, depending on how large your family is around dinner. But you can also bring in, through virtual means, you can bring in extended family members and friends and have conversations through video conferencing. And they can be both real-time and asynchronous, which means you could create a document where you write some information and then later someone else in the family writes some information and just write to one another, asynchronous conversation. So conversations are really important for students, and it helps them to solidify what it is that they're learning. These were some of the ideas we had for conversations in the past. And the conversation starters are really more for your middle school and high school kids who kind of tend to not open up so much about what they did in school as the younger students do. For them, you need to ask questions that allow them to create. Well, think about it. What's going on right now? If you ran the school, how would you do things differently in this kind of a situation? I like the last one. What do you think we will remember most from this whole experience? Just get into some conversations about the day, about just asking questions in general. This is a great opportunity for parents and teachers to connect together. So I would say teachers, send home some conversation starters for your parents, and parents, think about conversations that you might be having and even share that with the teacher or have the students share it with the teacher. So what other ideas do you have for maybe co-creating conversations between school and home? Put them in the question box. Balance. And you need some mind time to be, for instance, engaged in academics and thinking and problem solving. You need some body time to be moving and getting some exercise. And you need some soul time to just do something that feeds your soul. We shared images last time of students working, students building into their day some exercise or perhaps some meditation or some deep breathing. And then we even talked about the chart here. Have your child throughout the day just create a chart, like a time timeline. Have your child create a timeline of what they worked on, what they did, when they stopped to eat, when they stopped to hydrate, etc. Have them track their day, and at the end of the day, go back and highlight what was everything you did here that was really exercising your mind, and then what was exercising your body, and then what was feeding your soul. And then sit down with your student and analyze, and here's a good conversation you can have. Did you have good balance in your day? And I would encourage a lot of the adults in this conference to do that as well, because we all don't do enough of balancing that mind, body, and soul connection. So if you think about it, what are some ideas that you have? Put them in the question box. And then we must celebrate student accomplishments. It is so important to let students have bragging rights for things they're doing. And I've talked in the past about putting together celebration areas, and it could be on the refrigerator, it could be cork boards, it can also be online. But the important thing is, instead of parents selecting what they're proud of, so instead of parents saying, oh, I really love this, I'm gonna hang it on the refrigerator, tell your child, what were you most proud of that you did today? Let's put that up in your celebration zone. And for your older students, it still is the same. Like, look, there are a lot of great things you're doing. Celebrate the things that you think you're doing really well. Create, use, and older students will be more inclined to use the technology. Use a Padlet, use a Jamboard, use a Flipgrid. These are all different tech apps that students can use to record and talk about and share what they're celebrating. And what's great is when you use technology like this, you can involve those extended family members and friends. You can have all of the kids in the extended family, the cousins, all posting Flipgrids where they do just a short video conversation of something that they did today or something that was really intriguing to them, etc. So we need to celebrate the learning accomplishments we have. Again, what are some ideas you have parents and teachers for how we can create a celebration zone and have students celebrating what they've done. It may not be that easy for a parent to say to a high schooler, so what are you most proud of? Let's post that up someplace. Teachers could definitely offer that as an assignment, because that could definitely be, think about everything you did this week in this course. What are you most proud of? Take that, post it here, and we can have a celebration zone. And then that, if you let the parents know about that, then the parents can use that as a conversation starter. I saw in your celebration zone that, you posted this poem that you wrote. I loved it. Talk to me, like what inspired you to write that poem? And how did you come up with those particular words or that, symbolism, etc.? So let's try and create those connections that can between the teachers. Teachers have a little bit more power in some ways than the parents, and parents have power in other ways than the teachers. So if we put it all together, we can have a very rich environment. What other ideas do you have? Put them over in that question area. How can we get kids stopping and celebrating the things that they're most proud of? Because that builds confidence, and that's really important in learning. And then we have reflection. We do not do enough of this, adults or students. Just stopping, thinking, reflecting on life, and just gaining insights. Because when we pause to reflect, we gain insights, and those insights help us to grow. So we want students reflecting on their work academically. We want them to reflect on their work habits. How am I doing with staying on my schedule? How am I doing with ensuring that I'm creating balance? How am I doing with being on time to any of the sessions my teacher is offering? And then their interactions. How well did I do today in communicating with my teacher, my sibling, my classmate, my parent? And we can create checklists, we can create questions, different ways to get students to stop and reflect. So think about journaling, and important at this time, a gratitude journal. There are so many things that we're annoyed about that we could have a gratitude journal as well, and just think about the things that we're grateful for. Kids are looking to come back to school. It's good to be home, but they're also missing some things. Have them reflect on that. Have them journal about it. What do they miss most? What are they looking forward to when they get back to school? What do they think school will be like when they go back to school? What would they like to do on their first day? Just get them to stop and reflect. And again, I'm asking you as the teachers, how can you provide more opportunity for reflection? And parents, how can you be asking your children questions, nudging them to be reflecting? And how can you guys put it together? You'll notice that in the 8 elements of home-based learning, we're not talking specifically about instruction. We have on the teacher side 11 aspects of remote learning and all of the pieces that they are building in. And I will tell you that from the teacher side, teachers are working very hard to reinvent themselves and create these virtual learning environments. And parents are working very hard to juggle the home-based learning environments. So anything we can do to co-create together would be wonderful. Now, I'm actually going to leave this presentation and go over to this website, fortheparents.idecorp.com. On the site itself, we have a tab now called Co-Creation by Parents and Teachers. And what we've done is we've taken each one of the 8 elements and created a document for it. When you read, for instance, ways in which parents and teachers can co-create structures, you'll notice that if you just mouse over one of these areas, you see that little arrow, which is your pop-out arrow. So if I click on that, I will actually now pop out the document itself, which is called the Parent-Teacher Co-Creation of Structures. Now, what we've done in order to make it secure, the only person who can be writing in here right now is actually Tanya. But that's why we're asking you to put any of your ideas in that question area of the webinar, and then she'll be putting it in.
Yeah, there's been a lot of great ideas shared, and I think I have captured most of them in the document, but keep them coming, and I'll keep at it.
Typing?
I was fast and furious, but yeah, I think I got them all into the correct documents.
I see lots of good ideas already. I'm working on a blog post at the top because learning actually is very complex, and it has to do with engaging in activities that provide instruction, the learning part, but then practicing. applying, reflecting, and assessing. And we need to build all that in if we are the teachers, and we need to support all of that if we are the parents. So here we've got a teacher who creates how-to videos so the students can go to the videos first and then ask the teacher after that. I do like the consistent bedtime. I think anything that has to do with structure is going to be important. We've got here for setting up flexible learning areas. Yeah, I like this idea because I think if a student is going to be working on something where they need a flat surface, like particularly if they're doing some math and they have to use a protractor and a compass, the idea is you should work at your desk for this, or you should work at the kitchen table, or if you want to stand at the counter. Reading a book, curl up in any corner you want. I think it's important for students to realize that it's not appropriate to learn anywhere in any, reclining, etc. Like lying on the couch while you're holding up a math book and a math paper and trying to work is not appropriate. So while in school, teachers manage flexible space and flexible seating, and students learn where to go in the classroom. In the learner active classroom, we have flexible seating. So students can work on a couch, they could work on a rug, they could go to a high top table, a regular table, a round table, a single study carrel, conference table. And we work as educators to teach students where is the appropriate place for me to work. So that is just a discussion you can have at home with your children. Let's talk about the kinds of places you can do your work and the kinds of work you can do in each place. And educators, you could even send something home to parents that say, these are the kinds of activities your children will do during the day. I would encourage you to have them work at a table for this, but they can work anywhere they want for this. They should be in a quiet room for this. They could work at a table with their siblings for this. So let's help one another create the structures we need. All right, let's go back here again and let's see what else we have. How about co-creating projects? Let's see if we have some ideas in here. Oh, you guys are working. I like that teachers can survey parents on their students' interests, pets, vacations, whatever, because then teachers can try to attach some projects and problems around student interest that connect to the work that they're doing. Definitely like the arts projects, because a lot of time the arts get kind of lost in the shuffle, and it is so important because the arts are enriching. They feed our soul. So creating an arts project that has to do with whatever students are learning could be really cool. We'll do one more. How about, let's see if we have anything under the celebration zone here. This is great. My daughter wrote an ode today and we printed it to hang up so it's not just living on the screen. And she will share it with her grandparents and read it over the phone. That's really cool. At dinner, we share, today I'm celebrating. What a neat thing to do, to just go around the table and say, today I'm celebrating, and everybody gets to add something to that conversation. And a gallery at home. And if you have more than one child, you can have a gallery for each one of your children. And then, once a week, maybe on Fridays, you do a gallery walk. Let's go and look at what everyone has put up. And parents, I would encourage you to join right in. Create a celebration zone for yourself, because that kind of modeling is going to be good for students. All right, I'm going to stop here and go back to Tanya and just say, Tanya, are there any questions that need to be answered or that would be useful for the whole group to hear? Are there any other comments that you might have? Because you've been doing all the reading, not me.
There was just one more comment that came in with the suggestion of having students use nature to create a science project. So kind of going along with your suggestions about using what's around you. And I know I heard my own child talking about a science project she has to do this weekend that involves creating some sort of simulation of distance with the solar system that we're going to be doing in the backyard. So she's gathering up the things she needs to do that.
That sounds a little hard.
Wish me luck.
I will. Well, I know you guys go out most nights anyway and look for the constellations, so you're ahead of the game on that one. Okay, well, if no one else has any questions that they would like to post, I hope that this has given you some ideas. I hope that you will take some of these, put them into action, and I hope that we can create more communication between parents and the schools, the educators, so that we can co-create this home-based learning environment, because I don't think it's going away too soon. So the more that we can enrich the idea of these 8 elements of home-based learning, the better. And especially after a nice long weekend, or if any of you are going into vacation or coming off of vacation, it's a great time to reboot. It's a great time to say to your students, okay, let's think about these 8 things and how are we going to create these at home, and engage your students in co-creating with you, whether you're an educator or you're a parent. I wish you all the best. I give you lots of kudos for making sure that our children continue to be learning at high levels, and that we will all move through this and we're going to come out better for it. So thanks again for joining me tonight, and have a great weekend and a long weekend.